What have we
Some
got?
seconds.
What have we got? A podcast. When do we want it? Now. I'm going to climb on a train and stamp my feet, and then commuters who are trying to earn a living in pre-Brexit madness are going to be even more annoyed than they were.
Everyone is just extremely annoyed. So, listeners, lovely listeners of the Folly Charge Show podcast, where Jonny Smith and I are currently on the Eurostar. We're going through probably the tail end of Kent. I don't need to diss Kent. We're going
This is in Kent, isn't it? It is a place.
Or is it in Norfolk? No, it's in Norfolk.
Oh, actually, yeah. Sorry, got that wrong.
But yeah, so we're on our way to a conference in Paris, where we're also going to record another podcast with some guests. But while we're on the train, we thought, well, why don't we do one while we're on the train? Which sounded like a really good idea until we got on the train.
We realise there's a lot of other people on the train.
There's quite a lot of other
Unless
people.
you book out a carriage on your own, which we don't have the budget for.
So we don't know how noisy this is going to be. But what we've done is ask our lovely followers.
Yeah, Robert, I said to Robert, get on Twitter, use the power of SocMed, and ask the public if they've got any questions. We'll do a podcast Q&A.
We're now having quite a few. There's quite a few coming in. Well, we may as well do that first one.
Go on then.
Which is Lewis Carrella on Twitter, and his Twitter name is @LewisFCarrella. I don't know if I'm probably not saying it right. It could be Louis.
It could be Louis.
Louis
Luis.
Carrella. Anyway, so he said, try to answer this. Why are EVs so expensive?
Why are EVs so expensive?
Which 10 years ago, massively expensive.
There was a big gap 10 years ago.
And now, expensive, but more expensive. I mean, the gap is definitely narrowing.
Now slightly more expensive, and some of them actually are priced equivalent to the piston car.
Yeah.
In the name of, I suppose, loss-leading marketing. I don't know.
It's really difficult to know all the real reasons, because there's some. I can't help being mildly suspicious with big automotive manufacturers that have made combustion engines for sometimes 100 years.
Yeah.
And then they introduced an electric one that's very good, but they price it so that it won't be that much of a challenge to their existing market base.
Well, I suppose they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot, because they still spend billions, millions on R&D of all derivatives of car. So, well, what I would say was, you must take into it, if you're talking about just windscreen buying price, then they are typically slightly more. They were lots more, they're now slightly more. If you're talking about, if you take into account cost of ownership, which we've talked about loads of times, cost of ownership's a massive deal, because that's obviously your monthly running costs, your fuel bill, if you like, on a weekly, daily, weekly, monthly basis, and your servicing costs, which is typically a lot less, and your wear and tear on components, which is typically a lot less.
So, no, I mean, your lifetime cost, there's loads of studies about that that we could post on Twitter. If I was in my office, I could be bothered to do it, but it's
just go back to your office and post some of that.
But I mean, there is a lot of studies about the lifetime cost, so like over 10 years, say, an electric car, the savings you make over 10 years are way more. And not that people keep cars for 10 years, but if you look at it in those... through that prism, then you get a lot of. And now I'm just going to move my mic. I'm just going to tell, because I'm realising.
I think people that a couple of years ago said there's no way I'm going to spend 30 or 40 grand, for example, on a car where the engine, the heart of the vehicle, it could possibly be broken and null and void within, let's say, 5 years. So but those people, I think, are coming around, or have already come around and gone, do you know what, we've proved that the degradation of these sorts of cells that you use in a car are pretty damn good. And obviously the warranties are typically 7 or 8
years, and hundreds of thousands of miles. No, I mean, I think, and the other thing is that there's no, you can't say, oh, the batteries do this or the batteries do that, because they might have done it 5-10 years ago, but they won't do it in 5 or 10 years. They're certainly not doing it now, i.e. they'll outlast the car. And that's what we're learning now. And I mean, the latest stuff, which I think we've talked about on the podcast before, the 1,000,000-mile battery that Tesla are now producing, it's going to last 1,000,000 miles. Well, there's not many cars that last 1,000,000 miles.
Well, they're not designed to anymore. And even if they do, most people have a change in taste or circumstance where they can't be asked anymore.
But when what that makes sense for is not a privately owned car, but a fleet car or a taxi or something like that. You know, they're more likely to reach 1,000,000 miles in 10 years than a privately owned car. And I wouldn't think I've even driven 1,000,000 miles in my entire life. I don't know.
That's a good question.
Yeah, actually, that's true. I mean, if you do 30,000 miles a year, say, which is quite high.
And how many years have you been driving?
Since I was 19. And I don't know how old I am now. I can't do the maths.
It's maybe 10 years.
10 to 15 years.
10 to 15 years. Easy maths. Let's go on to the next question.
But I think the gist of it is it's going to change. And also, all the predictions are that in 2 or 3 years, there'll be price parity. And then I think in 5 years, they'll be cheaper to buy.
Well, also, Lewis, just one final comment. Second-hand prices, obviously, of EVs are quite buoyant.
Quite buoyant.
In other words, residuals are
much
more solid now than they were 2 years ago. Which means that, yes, if your windscreen price is higher to buy the car, it's a safer bet, right?
Yeah. Now, Adrian Heal has asked, what would you recommend for buying a used battery electric vehicle for the school run? Weekly shop. I'm concerned early Leafs have serious battery degradation. Brackets, I think, question mark. Thoughts.
So school run and weekly shops.
So like local,
distance.
short distance.
Local town, local village work.
Yeah.
We're talking like 4,000 miles a year, basically, which is what my parents do, and lots of people I know whose second car is doing stuff like that.
I mean, it absolutely depends on the car. So there isn't a set thing. So like a first generation Leaf, say 2011 to 2014. That's
still got yours?
I've still got mine. You could do all those things with it. We did denigrate the battery because we were really stupid, and so that, we could have looked after the battery more. So I've seen loads of other cars exactly the same age as mine that have all their battery bars. And what we did that was fatal. And now cars wouldn't do it because the software's got more intelligent. But we drive literally 5 miles to the shop, come back, plug it in. And it may be hadn't even used a bar, but we think, I need it at 100%. This is
it's the paranoia.
In 2011, because we were still getting used to it, and that's what damaged it.
First gen Leaves are down to what? Slightly damaged, less than $5,000.
Yeah, 4 or 5 grand you could get. I mean, mine's probably worth 2.
Yours has led a harder life.
It's led a very hard life.
It's been attacked by chickens and all sorts.
But I mean, it depends what you want to do with it. If you're going to drive it, doing school runs, shopping, then the old Leaf is absolutely fine. Old Renault Zoe, if it's got 60, 70 miles range, that's plenty. That's absolutely fine. But if you want to once a year drive to the Lake District, Scotland, Cornwall, depends where you live, south of France, then.
But in that and also it depends on the size of the car. Have you got 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, or no kids?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I would say personally, let's say your budget's a little bit more than 10k,
right,
or around 10. I'd get a really early i3 BMW, which are coming down to about 12. I've noticed, and I don't think they're ever going to get cheaper.
No,
so I think people are going to realise it's so damn good.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I know it's got an engine on board, but I would get a Vauxhall Ampera.
Yeah, no, they are brilliant cars.
Because they'll do 35 to 45 battery only.
Yeah.
And when I had mine, I did lots of EV only journeys on a week, a typical week.
Yeah.
But I could still just disappear to Heathrow. Or wherever on the drop of a hat, and it wasn't a problem. Also, my kids loved it because they're 2 separate back seats.
Yes, kids love
with their business class centre console, which made them feel very special.
And does it? Are there many of them around? I would think they're fairly rare.
Vauxhall sold about 3,500 Amperas, and Chevrolet in the UK sold 130 Volts.
Right.
So the Volt is a rare.
That's a rare one. Yeah.
I met an old man called Keith with a black one day before yesterday. Wow. He's had it since 2012.
Wow.
Yeah, you didn't need to know that.
No, but that's good that they're around. So I don't know. I would say have a go in a Leaf if you can. And there are, if you go to a second-hand electric car dealer, which we're about to do a whole episode about. That's because it's a really growing business. Then have a go in it and see what you think. But I mean, there's no reason. that a reasonably good one from, say, 7-8 years old,
yeah,
it's gonna be fine. You know, and the rest of it, you know, that's the one thing I will say
your
for our
service costs and stuff.
service cost. I mean, that was, again, we should have taken it in more, but in that time, 2 services in the entire time we've
You're
had
a good advert for the longevity, the robustness of an
and it's been such a reliable car. It's never, nothing has ever gone wrong with it. Not one. And that, if you think that's the first generation, the very first ones that came off the production line in Japan, it's never had like a door handle breaking, the windows not working, the indicator. I haven't even replaced any lights, so none of the bulbs.
Really,
not one. No, all brake lights, indicators.
It's just dirty and scratched.
It's just dirty. It's been scratched.
and I mean the car, not you.
Yeah, I'm fairly dirty and scratched.
Next question.
I will say on behalf of my wife, who's a huge fan, would you recommend the Renault Zoe as a first electric car, and all costs included? How does running one compare to an old-fashioned fuel engine cost-wise? Thanks for your continued good work, Robert and Jonny. Wasn't that nice? That is from Wraith
Stolf. The Bizarre Ghost.
It could be the Bizarro Ghost.
The Bizarro Ghost. It just sounds like a fantasy.
Wraith.
Terry Pratchett character.
St. Ulf. Wraith St. Ulf. I'm going for that.
Okay.
He's the Wraith.
Well, thank you, Wraith St. Ulf, the Bizarro Ghost.
The simple answer is absolutely yes.
Yes.
You know, it's a really simple one.
It's a good
And
car,
how does running one compare to an old-fashioned engine? So if you had a similar sized little, I don't know what would be similar, Renault Clio.
Yeah, diesel or petrol.
I mean, it basically works out. The simple way of thinking of it, if you can charge it at night on off-peak, that's where you get the most extreme price differential. So a Renault Zoe is probably 2p a mile or less if you can charge off-peak. And there's a lot of suppliers now that are doing amazing deals with off-peak electricity, including EDF. French companies that we are about to go into their territory.
It's true, very true.
Yeah, their overnight rates are amazing. It's half the day rate, and it starts at 9 o'clock at night, goes to 7 in the morning.
Thing.
I'm
on an ecotricity tariff, the EV specific one.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think it's that keen yet.
It's not that keen. No, that is very tempting now. I'm looking at one of the big 6 and going, ooh. Do I really want to support?
On this train home, I think we're going to twiddle with our price comparisons.
I think we need to. Right. But so you're looking at 2p a mile, and then an equivalent diesel or petrol car, it's sort of between 10 and 15. Depends on the car, depends how you drive it.
Yeah.
But it is so there is a really noticeable saving.
Service intervals
are less. There's less to go wrong. You know, all those things. We kind of know that.
Thank you, Wraith Stolf, the Bizarro Ghost. Just rolls off the tongue.
Here's one. Okay, here's a good one from Buck, Craig C. Rogers, aka Buck on the Twitters. Why during windy, not blustery conditions, are wind turbines being switched off? Is it because the grid wants to keep F2F spinning reserve?
Especially.
Now we should know what F2F means.
I thought you would know.
I
just read it and went, Bobby will know what that means.
Especially
F2F.
after the recent blackout, or because the local grid has too much renewable energy that it can't use.
Wants to keep F2F spinning.
I don't know what F2F spinning is.
F2F spinning.
Spinning reserve.
Especially after the recent blackout, or because the local grid.
Unless it's fossil fuel. I don't know. Anyway, here's what I understand, and this is from talking to engineers at the National Grid Control Room, is that it's all to do with supply and demand, and that's what the grid does. I mean, it was so obvious as soon as I understood that. You know, we think of it as like they generate electricity and you plug something in and it works.
Yeah.
But when you plug something in, you're demanding more, and so they have to meet that demand. So before you plug it in, they might not be making that electricity. That electricity doesn't exist until you plug it in. So it's a response to it. So all they're doing all day is balancing supply and demand. So, and what happens with wind is there are times when, particularly recently, we've had amazing days where wind is doing around 50% of all the power in a working weekday in England, because it is windy and they've got control of it and there's a big demand, so they can use it all.
Yeah.
Which is extraordinary. 50%. So the average is about 25-30% on an average day.
Right.
And there are really lousy days where it's like 5% when it's just very still, because we've got so much offshore wind. That's the big advantage we have.
I was going to say, being an island and us not being as sunny as other countries, wind is a good one
for
commercial sized wind.
And we have 40% of Europe's wind. Which I think, which I think if you look
it's
at
just bad diet.
If you look at our recent political turmoil, it's fairly obvious.
Next question.
But yeah, so all I know is that they can turn them off. So they just they turn the blades. They send a message through to the wind turbine. The blades turn. They stop generating power because there's just too much, and there's no way of using it, particularly at night. And that's why everyone wants storage and batteries and pumped storage. That's why all the grid is so keen.
So you can leave the turbines
running. So you leave them running
and just divert
produce
the energy.
And store that energy for the next day when it's more expensive. Because it is incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
So they're desperately looking for ways to use more. And obviously, electric cars one of the key parts of that. That if you can charge 2 million electric cars at night, you can use that power, and that means those cars are absurdly clean because that power is coming from it. And the expansion of wind is massive. Billions we're spending expanding the wind infrastructure out at sea. I mean, it's really huge.
Especially Scotland.
Yeah, Scotland, absolutely.
Who were always ahead of the curve on that, weren't they?
So what F2F is? Fossil to fuel. No. I don't know what F2F is, so we're a bit stumped by that.
Friend to foe.
Friend to foe.
Fiend to friend.
Stephen Crossman has said, how long do you think it will be until there is a large marketplace for used EVs which have kind of 150 mile real world range, which seems to be becoming minimum for most people looking for? Cheers, big fan of the show. Thank you, Steve. Well, it's going to be 3 or 4 years, isn't it, till all the crop of cars that are coming out now? Because what have you just driven? Peugeot
E208.
And that's 150 plus?
It's 211 WLTP.
Right.
So the current Zoe. The current Leaf. The current Leaf's over 150. I think.
Oh no, the new Leaf is definitely 200 plus.
The new
Leaf. I've just driven that.
So you got them.
VWID. They're basically coming out now or next year. So it's going to be 2 or 3 years before there's any second-hand ones of those.
Knocking about. A few of these questions have been about used EVs, which is interesting because this is something very, very close to the horizon for fully charged. Yeah. But needless to say, because there's been a lot more EV sales in the last 3 or 4 years, suddenly the second-hand market and the residuals tend to be sort of perking up.
Well, that was
sorry.
We're
being disturbed by the Euro.
We'll just listen to it. I'll tell you what I was going to say was the Tesla Model S that I leased for 4 years. Yeah. Which was essentially, it had a tiny bit of cosmetic adjustment to one of the lower fairings.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a wheel.
I mean, you had to get down on hands and knees to look at it to see it. It wasn't like an obvious thing.
No, it was minor.
It did a bit of slight rubbing against a very stout stone wall. It did a bit of bollard. But other than that, it was absolutely fine, mechanically fine, and very reliable. Well, they were expecting, I think, to get 38,000 for that at an auction, and it went for 42.
Did it?
Yeah, because lovely Ewan McTurk wanted to buy it.
Did it?
And it went above his.
It went beyond his.
Yeah.
Interesting,
so that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And it also then made me think, if I'd bought that car and driven it for 4 years and sold it, I think it would have been cheaper than leasing it.
I'll be honest.
I don't even want to think about it.
I owned and I wasn't intending to sell it, but I owned my Volt and did 45,000 miles in it.
Right.
And I sold it for what I bought it for.
Wow. But you bought it second hand initially?
I bought it still under warranty.
Right.
And I bought it when it was it 3 years old? Yeah.
It came out a while ago, didn't they?
Yeah, mine's a 2013 car. I think I bought it in 2016.
So, so I've forgotten the question now, but yes, I think the answer is probably yes. Whatever the
Should we
thing
just
was.
say the answer's yes?
The answer's yes.
The answer's yes, and that's that. And so.
Oh, hang on. There was one here. Oh my God, there's a lot of questions now.
Well, we need to rattle through.
Oh my God.
While we're under the sea.
Okay, we've done that one.
Steve Crossman.
Dave Jones. Do you think it will long before we'll have a breakdown vehicles with charging capabilities to give EVs an emergency top-up in case of running out?
That's a really good question.
Because what I always think is, there are. So the AA, I think, have now 4 of their AA support trucks with batteries on board that can do a DC to DC dump quite fast. They can give you like 20 miles in 5 minutes, just to get you somewhere.
Like those batteries that you carry around for your phones.
Yes, it's like that.
Like a scaled-up version.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But what it is, that is a really good point, because the whole thing about, I'm going to run out on the motorway, you're not, because you've got to be determined. You can do it if it's a malicious act.
I nearly did.
I've nearly done it.
At the weekend
but you
with
kind
my
of
children and my wife on board. But my wife actually quite enjoyed it. We didn't get anxious. We sort of embrace the challenge.
Yeah. No, you get close, but you're so aware of how far you've got, how far you can get. It doesn't just stop without any warning, which you can do. I've done that so many times in petrol and diesel cars. It's just suddenly conked out because I hadn't looked at the...
It does very much remind you many times.
Yeah.
You are going to run out.
You are going to run out.
And it tells you I'm shutting down
the failed charge points, that's a really good point, that you get to a charge point
and you've
got just enough to get there. You get there, you plug in, we've all been there. And I think we'll do that less because there's more chargers now and the newer ones are much more reliable.
The comms are more reliable. Yeah. For example, ZapMap.
Yeah.
Very good at saying if there's an issue with that charge point.
But if you did that and if you're really stuffed and you're in the whoop somewhere and you can ring the I'm not just going to use the AA.
Yeah,
no,
it could be
advert for them.
I actually use what was called Britannia Rescue.
All right, yes.
And they're now called something else. I think they're part of the LV group.
All right. Oh, that's good.
It's not. I'm not advertising.
No.
I've paid hard cash for about the last 18 years of my life.
Oh no, I had AA coverage for years, which I used a lot because I had cars that broke down.
They were old shitters.
Yeah, and now I don't. I don't use it. I mean, I've got an AA coverage now.
Yeah, I've got coverage.
I've not used it since I've had an electric car. That is a very interesting point.
No, I haven't.
Not once have I used it. Yeah.
Not even for a tyre.
No. So yes, they do. So they do exist, but it's the failed charge points is a really good point. That if you're really stuffed, and they can come to you there and give you enough to 20, 25 miles to get you to a charge point that works.
Thanks, Dave Jones.
What are you most looking forward to seeing in 2020? Is there a particular EV, renewable, or clean tech product that has caught your eye? Very good, from Plug-in Adventures.
Plug-in Adventures,
yes.
A well-known friend of ours. I would say the VW-ID, the 77 kilowatt hour.
I was trying not to be a VW apologist / fanboy.
I'm interested. I'm very much
77 kilowatt hour Golf-sized electric car with definitely 300 plus mile range.
What I'm going to say here is I want to see a Honda E on the road.
Yeah.
I want to see a Honda E out in the wild.
Yeah.
I know it's not, the range is not its strong point on paper. They might surprise us in reality, who knows. But I would say Honda E for looks.
Yeah.
I'd say VW ID3 to drive and to...
I think it's going to be brilliant.
To see how it changes the landscape of our world.
Yeah, because that's the big one. I mean, that's where by the end of next year there could be 100,000 VW IDs on the roads of Europe, around the world. It's just extraordinary.
Yeah.
The production facilities they've got. So that is hard not to be sort of interested in how that works. I'm trying to think what else. The Tesla Model Y, I think is going to be. I'm going to get annoyed now. I've got a Tesla Model 3.
Oh, are you?
Because if there's one failing, it's like a hatchback back is really useful.
Yes, it is more useful than a saloon. Yeah.
And the good thing is,
it's strange that they didn't do that.
Yeah. So the Model Y is basically a Model 3 with a proper lifting tailgate.
Really?
That's all it is. It's exactly
isn't it slightly higher up? Isn't it?
It might be a little bit higher.
It's like a faux SUV looking thing.
But that was that's.
Oh, hang on a minute! Stop the clock.
All right.
Rivian.
Oh
my word!
Because Chelsea Sexton has just been at the Rivian factory. I saw some of the footage last night. 4 fully charged
videos.
Oh my God, that is coming! And it's just that when you see in a factory and there's 15 Rivians in a row, and then there's some clips that we can't use.
Oh really?
From their workshop, which have like post-it notes on the wall of what they're doing. And they wanted her to film it. They said, "Oh, you can film that. We want Robert and Jonny to see it, but you can't use it."
Oh, really?
So we're going to...
Can I come to your house and look at that footage?
Yeah, no, it looks good.
That sounds brilliant.
Well, I mean, the bits I saw...
It's the acceptable face of a large vehicle.
Yeah.
So, a few days ago, there's always a bit of a tussle amongst me and other people on social media about the point of SUVs.
Yes.
And I've always sort of said, look, it's got to stop. It's got out of control. Yeah. Unnecessarily large, bloated vehicles that aren't brilliant at anything.
With one person in them.
One person in them.
Just crazy.
They're mostly made out of steel. Yeah. They don't go around corners brilliantly. No. They're not efficient.
They're hugely inefficient.
And I'm sorry, but they're not.
That's what's so appalling is in the last 5 years, the UK's CO2 emissions from transport have gone up
because of
SUVs, not because of anything else.
But I don't have a problem with them if they're clever.
They're electric.
If they're clever.
Yeah.
Which is why if you go from your Audi Q7 into your e-tron, okay, great.
Yeah.
But Rivian, I'm going quiet now, and I'm rubbing my thighs.
Yeah.
While Robert looks at the next question.
This one is where I'm confused about. You might know more. Seth Moss.
Would you be willing to comment on the situation where manufacturers are actively pushing sales to 2020 for the emissions credits cars count as 2? The Peugeot E208 is now pushed to 2020 with a 11 kilowatt charger as an excuse for the Netherlands,
which is a bit
faff. Do you know, I've read a bit about these credits, but I haven't read an awful lot
that's
about
the trouble.
these credits.
It's a really confusing bureaucratic thing.
Yeah, and I know it's a way for manufacturers that make piston cars to offset their emissions.
Yeah. It's like California did that probably 20 years ago, where you couldn't sell a V8 pickup truck in Los Angeles if you didn't also have an electric vehicle on them. That's what the EV1 was all about. That's what that's how we met Chelsea. That's where all that came from, and that idea was eventually rescinded, but for a while it really pushed the development of electric, because the Prius absolutely came out of that legislation.
Yeah.
Because they which I think, and I've always thought, for all its drawbacks and looks, it was a genius bit of engineering. Absolutely stunning.
In fact, there's a question that's just come in from Mr. Johnny Smith. Amazing this. Hi guys, I'm looking for an EV1 to privately own.
Oh yeah.
Can someone in the world find one for me and possibly help me buy it?
Yeah.
Interesting question, Johnny.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Because there is one. I've seen one in a museum in Los Angeles. There's a car museum.
In the Peterson Museum.
Yes.
Is it Peterson?
Yeah, there's one there.
There's one I know that Nicky Gordon Bloomfield at Transport Evolved tipped me off about, that's in a university basement, covered in dust. Someone's drawn naughty gentlemen sausages all over it in dust. Yes. But in all seriousness, yes, I would love to own an EV1 and love to put modern tech in it. Yeah,
but the answer to that is basically, I think that I'm sure that a lot of these companies, I mean, when you think about Volkswagen have released the ID3 when it's ready, as opposed to, let's delay it until 2020. I mean, when did I drive that? It was early this year.
You drove that much earlier this year.
So it wasn't ready then, and they went, right, well, we could sell this now, but we're not going to. We're going to wait. That's not why it was. They had a lot more development to do on it to get it.
Porsche apparently could have brought the Taycan out earlier, but I've heard the reason why. One reason why they wanted to test it, they wanted to do extra testing for WLTP.
Right.
But two, I think they wanted to release it with multiple models immediately, rather than releasing it in one derivative.
Yeah.
Which is why they've done what they've done. Within a month of it being launched, they've brought 3 out. Three versions.
Yeah. I'm currently in the United States on holiday. This is from Rhys Adams. And on a talk show, they were discussing the amount of energy it takes to create and build an electric car and then process for creating electricity.
What's your take on this? And do you think the governments should do more to push solar? Well, Rhys, I mean, what's your...
the second question first. Yes, they should do more to promote solar. They should certainly pass legislation to insist that all new houses, that's when it makes the most economic sense. You're building a house,
mandatory on new
you're
builds.
Putting a roof on it, make the roof out of solar panels.
Yeah, totally.
You doofuses.
So that is... And have a charge point of some sort. And even if you don't use that charge point, you might be able to do a deal with your neighbour who might want one.
Yeah.
Maybe a home battery installed, mandatory home battery, so that we can, on the previous questions about creating cheap power at night and filling batteries.
You can store it, I mean, but the thing about the energy, there's an endless debate about that. I think the important thing is, as consumers, as drivers, we go to a garage, we buy petrol, we put it in a tank, we drive the car, and some of us now might be aware of the noxious fumes coming out the back, but we're not aware of what happened with that fuel before we bought it. That is so hidden from our day-to-day lives. The same as meat and milk and bread, everything.
Yeah.
You know, you go into a supermarket, buy a loaf of bread. Where does the bread come from? I don't know. Bakery.
Sliced ham in a shrimp pack.
Yeah.
You go,
so in a way, one of the key things is this sheer quantity of electricity, not oil or gas, electricity that's used by the refining industry, and it is phenomenal
to create
petrochemicals. To create petrochemicals.
And
that's never put in the equation. And I mean, I think it's changed now, and I think the real key for how nervous the petrochemical industry was they released those figures very openly until 2005 to the United Nations Data Statistics Department. You can go look them up, so you can see what each country, how much electricity it uses to run their refineries.
How much electricity it uses to make petrol?
Yeah, and it's terawatt hours in the UK, and it's thousands of terawatt hours in America. So it's a lot. One engineer at a refinery told me we use the same amount of electricity as Leicester and Coventry. I don't know why he chose those two towns. Over a year, that's how much they use.
That's because he knew you'd understand.
Yeah. Because we were in southwest Wales. We weren't exactly near Leicester and Coventry.
Well, what I would say also is, as we've said I said it years ago with piston cars, the greenest car is a used car.
Yes.
In terms of energy to produce
impact,
it.
yeah.
Because if it's a 15-year-old car that's had two owners, it was made 15 years ago, obviously.
And it's still being used now.
And if the cars are maintained to a high standard, they're most efficient. Cars that aren't maintained to a high standard are never going to be that efficient. There are so many people that just don't check, don't care, drive around with flaccid tyres.
Yeah, or massive. I mean, I was behind a van the other day where I couldn't see the back of the van for the black clouds of smoke coming out of it.
Yeah, so it's not.
And you could see other drivers were like pulling away from it to avoid it because it was out. I mean, that is quite unusual, to be honest. But when it is bad, it's like, Jesus.
So really, the greenest car is a second-hand electric car.
Yeah, yes.
Really?
Absolutely. But also, I think there's a lot of myths about the understanding of batteries, which is we're all learning about it. Is that you think, I'm buying a car and it's got a battery, and when it's worn out, I'll have to throw it away. Well, it doesn't wear out; it fades, and then you use it for something else, static storage, and then, which is what we're shooting some stuff early next year with Helen Chesky. We will see how they recycle batteries, and it's like, oh dear, is that gone weird?
It's chafing on your chin.
It's chafing. But it's
talking about his microphone.
But it's 100. It's like basically 100% of the materials in the battery can be used again. So it isn't the same as buying diesel or petrol. It isn't the same.
Well, because once it explodes, it's gone.
Yeah, it's kind of gone. It's difficult to use it
in
again.
a puff of smoke.
Yeah. So it's very difficult to know the real impact of making batteries. It's going to have an impact. You've got to dig stuff up.
Yeah.
You've got to refine it. You've got to transport it. All those things.
Yeah.
But here's one thing I learned the other day: is the majority of ship-based CO2 emissions. So it's 35%. It's somewhere like 32-35% of all ship-based CO2 emissions and pollution is from moving oil. Because of course we move a lot of oil by ship. Lots of tankers. They're massive. They sit really low in the water, which means you've got to push trillions of cubic meters of water out of the way with huge engines burning bunker fuel, which is basically like vomit. It's like black vomit, big lumps of tar. Yeah. So
I don't like to think about that.
And we never think about that.
I get a bit depressed.
Yeah, no, it's God.
It makes me think about my neighbour going on 4 cruises a year. But basically just taxiing around the ocean, eating too much and drinking too much.
Oh, here's a good one from Vasily Papa. I've got a 24 kilowatt hour leaf, which is the same one as me. No signs of any battery degradation at 30,000 miles. And I've heard stories of some at 100,000 miles. Absolutely right, yeah. Absolutely fine for any journey except going north-south through mid-Wales, where the charging system is largely absent or broken. I love that. That's a combination of optimism and let's be real.
Let's be real. I don't take it out of my neighbourhood.
Yeah.
You were saying about the 24 kilowatt hour leaf. It's proved to be a really strong, reliable little ox.
Yeah.
And in the right circumstance, it's fine.
Yeah.
I would not buy a 24 kilowatt hour leaf now if I had to do all the jobs within my family, or if it was my sole car.
Yeah.
Personally. But that's something you have to consider with all car ownership. Are you buying fit for purpose?
Yeah. Seeing how long
if you're not, then hashtag sorry not sorry.
Yeah.
Have you got any ideas what might replace electric cars? From Matthew Green. Well, 16 valve Mini at 16 valve Mini. Well, Matthew, massive question. Short sentence, massive question. What might replace electric cars? I just think electric cars will become more refined, and I think someone asked me the other day about hydrogen.
It's not really what's going to replace. I think it's fairly clear now that the electric motor as a motivating force of a ground-based vehicle
is proven to be pretty efficient.
To be amazingly efficient and long-lasting.
Yeah.
and all you need to do is get the energy to it. So it might be hydrogen fuel cells, it might be batteries, it might be a new form of battery that we don't even know yet. There's certainly new generations of battery coming out that will be smaller, lighter, last longer, can be recharged more. It's actually, what's interesting is the recharging more, I think, is going to be more times.
Less focus on range, and more about quick chargeability
and longevity of how many you can. So the idea with the million-mile Tesla battery, so weird. This 3,000 times now a Tesla battery can be charged before you see some degradation. You think, oh, that's not very many, but actually 3,000 times is like 12 years. So and the new generation is 6,000 times before there's any battery.
Double.
So it is literally doubling it. So that's what they're calling a
I think,
mile battery.
energy density in cells is the thing.
It is improving.
And I suppose using less, relying on less precious minerals.
It also might be, I mean, my big shtick is, and this is a contentious one, but I think if you live in a city, it's about private ownership. Do you need to own a car? I mean, I think where you and I live out in the sticks, it would be very difficult. You're in a rush, you order the autonomous Uber.
Yeah.
And you've got a sick kid and it takes 3/4 of an hour to get there. That could be quite annoying.
And also whether you're a car enthusiast or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether you're a car driver / user, or whether you're an enthusiast. Because I think enthusiasts are always going to want to own stuff.
Yeah.
I think you're always going to want to own a machine when you get your, I don't know, Bollinger / Rivian / Series 2 Land Rover converted to EV. You'll want to own that.
Yeah.
But if you just lived in the city and you weren't a car guy. Next question.
Oh, that's quite a good one. Moving at high speeds on an international mass transit system, do you think the future of mobility should be more rail-bound at the cost of decreased investment in road building and maintenance? Or does the future depend on road traffic electrification and automation? My God, this is from Philip Salet.
Philippe? Or is it
Philippe. Could be Philip.
Salamea?
Salet Maya? Sorry, Philip, this is going to be so annoying as we try and work out how to say that.
Your Twitter handle is at SaletP.
Yeah.
I remember years ago you used to be able to drive cars onto rail trains to go long distances.
Yeah.
That was when cars weren't capable of doing high speeds for
Renault 4. Is that the one that was a bit like a cereal box?
Yes.
Yeah, I put one of those on a train in Paris and we went down to, I don't know where, Marseille or Cannes.
Really?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And we sat in a little quite uncomfortable carriage and then behind us was like 40 cars, and it was full. There was loads of cars on it.
Full of cars.
Lots of Citroën. What's the Citroën DS, the one that goes up, the air suspension one?
Yeah, and then the CX that came after it.
There was a lot of them. This is many years ago. In the
old
days.
70s?
Yeah.
It
wasn't my car, it was my girlfriend's car.
Okay, yeah. You were a mere child at the time.
It was so exciting at the time, and then you get to the other end and you walk up and you have your papier, do your documentation, and then they give you the key, so they keep the keys, and you get in your car and you drive off the train.
I like the idea of that because lots of people fly. In the UK, if you go, I want to go to Scotland, most people will fly. I want to go to Cornwall. Well, you fly to Newquay and then borrow a car or whatever. I actually quite like the idea of using rail more. The problem we have in the UK with rail is it's not affordable when it should be.
Yeah.
And I think it's a constant problem.
Is a real
if
problem.
I price up how much it costs to go down to London for a meeting and I go on the train because I don't want to drive.
We could have flown to Paris today for half the price we're spending on this train.
What?
Yeah. It's really, and we're not in. I just want to point out,
we're not in business.
We're not in business.
No, have you heard any cutlery chinking?
Yeah, there's been no cutlery
clinking. Have you heard? You haven't heard Bobby Lou's lovely magnum of mum champagne
fizzing away in the background.
You haven't heard any of that, have you? Because it doesn't.
So that is. You're absolutely right. It is an expensive. It's crazy that it's so expensive. But I mean, that is fairly UK specific.
It is,
unfortunately, because
you
catch a train here or in Italy.
It's a bit of a tangent, but the UK needs to bloody poach the people in charge of foreign railway systems.
Yeah, can we
French,
get one?
German, Italian, Spanish railway systems, and bring them over and go, guys, how do we do this?
Yeah.
Because seriously, it's ruined here.
Because I remember being on the ice train. I had a Euro pass or whatever it is, where you can go on any train. One of those ones. When I was filming it at Volkswagen in Wolfsburg, I was on my way to Wolfsburg from Luxembourg on an ice train. So fast, and the man walked up to me, the ticket man, and he said, "Can I see your ticket, please, sir?" He was so, and I went, and I think actually said, "How did you know I was English?" And he just smiled. He just knew.
English.
Yeah. And then he looked at my ticket.
Were you wearing a fleece?
I could have been.
Did you have your Union Jack very tight shorts on?
Yeah, very, very tight Union Jack
And he
shorts.
said, "Oh, I don't know, I just had a hunch."
I just had a hunch. But then he looked at my ticket, and the Euro Pass, or whatever it is, the International Rail Pass, didn't cover you for ice trains. And I went, oh. He said, I'm afraid you'll have to pay an excess charge to use the ice train. And I went, oh, God, all right. €4.
What?
Because I was expecting like 60 quid or something, or 100.
But in the UK it would be.
Yeah. So it was an extra $4, but he was quite apologetic that I had to pay an extra €4. I said, honestly, that's fine. Very happy to pay.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Rupert
Philippe.
Wilson, do you think we will see consolidation of the UK charging infrastructure under a few big providers, or will the current companies remain and just get better at sharing access to users regardless of
Rupert, this is a big question. And it's an ongoing daily issue for me and other EV drivers. Less so if you're a Tesla warrior.
Yeah, but here's the thing, is that all the chargers that have touch to pay, where you just tap your credit card on, are in use all the time. Because I just want that for all the other people to go,
yeah.
Oh, that's
Do you want to make more money?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want more people to use your chargers?
Please just have contactless generic payment.
Yeah. I don't want to join anything.
In the same way that I don't live in London, therefore I don't need an Oyster card. But when I do go to London, I just blink my way into the underground using my debit or credit.
So it's got to be, and I mean there is government legislation in the works, which strangely enough I don't quite know why it's been held up.
Well, they're just
must be something else going on.
There's lots of shouting, Robert. There's an awful lot of shouting.
But there is legislation that will make it mandatory for all chargers to be accessible to everyone in a single system, and they're all talking about that. All the charging companies.
So to that end, because I stopped at Hopwood Services the other day in my e-Golf, family in it. I'd run it really low because it was at night, it was raining, it was cold, there were 4 people in the car. Found my Ecotricity charger. The app shut itself. Unfortunately, I managed to get it on charge, but it wasn't as quick as I would have liked. And I looked to the other end of the car park, and in the rain, there were these bright, shiny, no less than I think 12 Tesla superchargers. And I was like, why can't I borrow one of those? I'm willingly.
I mean, Tesla have said they are open to discussion about other cars being able to use them, and there's no technical reason they can't.
No, and
they might have to adjust the charging socket because it's. But now they've got CCS, particularly.
They can have CCS because of the Model 3.
Model 3,
and they want to make some money back on this infrastructure. This amazing infrastructure they put in. Tesla, if you're listening, and some of you will be, you just will. I'm sorry, but you are. Please, can we sort this out? Because it would be wonderful. I know I haven't bought a Tesla, but don't hate me. Let's just increase this infrastructure. It would make such a massive difference. Can we start a really kind of polite campaign?
Oh God, that's a good one.
On that note, we're going to move on.
Yeah, Tesla Model 3 left LR driver.
What, Land Rover? Tesla Model 3 Land Rover driver. Maybe they are. Maybe they've got 2 cars.
Is there a way to calculate the energy and CO2 on a Eurostar from London to Paris versus the equivalent flight?
Yes, but not today.
Yes, but not today. And I mean, I think the thing is, because I'm trying to write this thing at the moment about flight shaming flights, and because the actual fuel economy on a plane per passenger mile is amazingly good. This is the weird thing.
I suppose the efficiency of plane engines is increased. 400
people on a plane, and it's going through the air. It's got no friction. It's got
no
road.
There's
minimal resistance. The engines are incredibly efficient now. I mean, I'm arguing. I know a failed argument, because to get that thing in the air, you're basically, there's no other way of describing it, you're burning a metric ton of fuel to get it up there. And that's where a lot of the research into electric...
It's not as bad as a cruise ship, though, sure.
No.
I know a cruise ship's got 4,000 people on it,
but
the visual emissions and the efficiency, like you say, pushing a big lead weight through the water.
Ocean. And they don't measure in gallons, they measure fuel in tons.
It's tonnage, isn't it?
So we don't know that.
Sorry, we're not going to give you a detailed response because we don't have time today. Sorry.
Oh, that's quite a good one.
Kevin Farrell
said, are the UK's government electric vehicle targets A, realistic, B, too ambitious, C, not nearly ambitious enough, or D, some other answer I haven't considered? Probably D.
I've got to read these things. Are the UK's governments...
they're definitely realistic, as in they can be achieved. So in that sense, It's very easy to achieve.
Yeah, the whole 2040 thing about no vehicles with an engine by 2040. It's like, well, that's very far away, and I'm not massively bothered by 2040.
Yeah.
I'd rather look a bit closer, like 2025.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's look a little bit closer.
And in a way, I think it's the market and the technology will drive it more than legislation. Because if people have a go in one, go, oh my God, I can drive 300 miles in this VW, and I understand that doesn't let you down, and you can charge it, and there's the charge, they'll buy them.
Well, and also, it will also be fueled, and then you said fueled, I suppose, by businesses.
Yeah.
If businesses can't deliver into a city in their vans,
all the vans,
7.5 tonners, lorries, and I think that's it's between now and let's say 2025, so the next 5 years. That's where I think we're going to see a massive change.
Yeah.
Like commercial vehicles, 7.5 tonners, and hopefully trucks, heavy freight.
Yeah.
That's where the fuel changes of those and the incentives for those.
Yeah.
I just want my postman to turn up in an electric van.
Yeah, me too.
And I want my wife's clothing order from Hermes or whoever.
Well, I mean,
to turn up in an electric van.
Amazon have ordered 100,000 Rivian vans, and they've been sort of starting to happen.
And of course, London Electric Vehicle Company, the black
with
cab
their
van.
New van.
Yes,
those cabs
I want to drive
now.
that.
I walked through London the other day.
They're everywhere.
Well, I think there's 3,500 of them on there. That happened really fast, and now I've done 3 rides in them because I use an app that used to be called My Taxi and is now called, or it's called Halo. It's had like 5 different, so I can never find it because it's got a different name. But whatever it's called, My Journey or something, and you can book one of those. And I had a diesel one I could book in 2 minutes, and they call it an eco taxi in 5. And I went, I don't mind waiting 5 minutes. And I got one of those, and I talked to the guy, and he raved about it.
Yeah, everyone I've sat in.
The first few I spoke to, the cabbies were going, where's nowhere to charge it, and all that stuff. And this guy was brilliant. He went, I charge it at home every night. It's really easy.
What the cabbies are, I think what's happening is, even if you don't care about emissions and environment, if your pocket is seeing the difference, if your wallet is feeling the difference,
and you're more comfortable and less hot and vibrating.
You go, well, hang on a minute, my fuel bill is at least half.
The guy I spoke to said he's never saved less than £110 a week on fuel.
Okay.
Which is,
that's quite a few fares, right?
Yeah, and he does use petrol because he does use it to go to Heathrow. He'll use the range extender.
Okay, next question.
That one, I don't know. I mean, there's not. Should we do
Trevor Wilkinson, I currently rent on a first floor apartment, so home charging is not available. For an EV to be viable for me, I would need my workplace to install chargers. What incentives are there for businesses to put chargers in their car parks?
I mean, there are, and I don't know what they are, and I'm trying to remember which companies do that, but it's worth checking with some of the new energy companies like OVO, Octopus, Good Energy, Ecotricity. Those ones are doing all sorts of schemes like that to install chargers in the workplace. And at the moment, as we're sitting on a train with a very low CO2 footprint, because of course this is electric and it's powered by nuclear in France.
EDF, is it EDF or is it? Yeah.
Well, I mean, all the electricity in France, 95% is nuclear. So.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well, the short answer, Trevor, is we don't have stats.
No.
But I find persistence in your workplace pays off.
Yeah.
Nagging them and then making them feel bad about the fact they haven't done it.
Because that's the perfect solution. I know. There's 2 people I know who can't charge at home, but can charge at work, and that's how they run their car. They don't ever charge it anymore.
Well, and even if you brokered a deal where you contribute towards the electricity you use, but the other thing is if you work for a company who has visitors, it's quite an interesting incentive for you to have charging infrastructure for visitors.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about everyone that works there. It's about people that come and go. And it might be better for business.
Yeah, I would go and visit a big factory.
The company my wife works for has an on-site shop, a factory outlet, if you will, and a nice restaurant cafe next to it. And that's why I said, if you install a double charge point, the people that come and eat there and shop there, they could charge as well as the staff.
Yeah.
Because my wife couldn't charge at work.
Right.
So she'd have to do the to and fro journey.
Yeah.
Anyway. I'm enjoying this Q&A.
Yeah.
Well, I actually feel like we're talking sense sometimes.
I know, it's quite weird. No gap coal PNG. So if you wanted to modify an EV by putting larger off-road tyres and lifting the suspension an inch or two, how much impact would this have on the range and performance?
Quite a lot.
Yeah, but example we have in mind is an ENV 200 as an emergency services vehicle in developing countries on bad roads. Well, here's the thing. The only thing I've experienced in this realm is driving that Land Rover Defender that Land Rover converted to electric.
Yes.
And when you drove it along the, excuse me, it was a dual carriageway, freeway, it was comical to see how quickly the range was dropping. Just because you're driving a 2.5 ton brick.
On knobblies.
On knobblies. And then we drove off that and into a private estate where they were doing test drives, which is where they do that. So you can't go fast.
No. Slower speed, rougher
slow
ground.
Speed, and you're really rough ground. It was bouncing over it, and they're brilliant. I mean, the drivetrain on those cars is phenomenal. I've had them, I love it. And I was doing like 5-6 miles an hour on really rutted. You wouldn't want to go faster. It was uncomfortable. You were bouncing up and down, big rutted holes, slopes. It used nothing. I mean, it was amazing. You could see the energy needle. When we were on the motorway, it was bang, it was bending the needle because it was going right up to the top. And when we were driving at that speed, it was barely moved, like a few kilowatts. It was nothing.
Yeah.
And they've discovered that they can drive like 60 miles on a road and 200 miles on a track. Because they're using so little energy to, once you get it going, it's tiny, just to keep it ticking over. You're not revving it, and at those low speeds, and that's where they use it in a safari park in Kenya. I think they've got 6 of them. They don't have to bring in diesel, they charge it under solar panels. They drive right up to a lion and her cubs, so they're inches away from the animals, because there's no noise.
No pollution,
and people
are
taking pictures of them out the back of it.
Perfect.
Sounds amazing,
So I would say for this person,
but it depends what.
Which is no gap coal PNG. What I would say is, first and foremost, what kind of a range do you need for this? Because instead of buying a dedicated EV, maybe you should get one retro converted.
Yes.
So you could get a Defender or a Hilux, for example, convert that with an aftermarket electric motor and battery pack.
Have a look for New Electric Ireland and New Electric in Amsterdam, because they do. We've done episodes about them.
Electric classic cars. If you're out of the UK, EV West, obviously, Stealth EV, Zelectric for VW stuff. There's lots of guys converting piston cars, and it doesn't have to be a classic. You could just pick a 5-year-old Hilux. That's really good.
That's already built to do that sort of stuff.
I mean, obviously you've got people like Mercedes bringing the EQV out, which is a dedicated van.
The Rivian.
Rivian, of course. And
the Tesla pickup.
The Tesla pickup. And then you've got Renault with their range of... and Peugeot are going to be bringing out an electric commercial. So it depends on your budget and your requirement.
Oh, that's quite neat. We were talking about that this morning. We'll just do that one as the last one.
From Peter Brazier.
Yeah. Or Brazier, maybe.
Brazier.
Peter Brazier.
The introduction of pay per mile is the most likely method to replace the lost tax from fuel duty. This will wipe out the cost savings of operating an EV, make it the same cost as petrol and diesel, ruining the economic argument for going electric. How can we avoid that?
Right, okay. There's more than one argument in favour of electric cars would be my answer to that. There is currently an enormous saving to be made in terms of fuel cost and running costs. But you can't, if there is currently how many electric cars? 150,000, 200,000 on the road.
Benefit in kind, I suppose, as well.
So there's been a lot of incentives to encourage people to get them, which is why they are cheaper to run them. But once it is the fairest way of doing it. That if you're a 70-year-old pensioner and you drive your car 5,000 miles a year, you should pay less to keep up the roads than some doofus like me who drives 30,000 miles a year. I should definitely pay more for that because of to maintain the road system. And I mean, that's obvious. I don't know that it's going to, the savings you can make from fuel over a diesel car. So if you were charging a diesel car per mile rather than a set road duty, that would still, at the moment, and it was the same as an electric car, the diesel car would still be more expensive to run.
Would it?
Yeah, because you're paying for the fuel as well.
Of course,
And if you can charge, so all those advantages, if you can charge at home, if you can use solar to charge, all those arguments still stand up. So in a way, it doesn't make any difference. And I think it's the 2 ministers of transport that I've spoken to, because those are the sort of people I hang out with.
You know your ministers of
Don't you?
MOTs.
But they both said we can't tax electricity. They're not even thinking of it. Because there's too many sources of it. How on earth would you do it? But they can tax miles, and all modern cars are connected and have, they will
have GPS of some sort. And
as I said at a talk to the Burford and Chipping Norton round table.
I beg your pardon?
When I was explaining about how Tesla track all your movements in a Tesla.
Oh, yeah.
That they know, that Tesla know where all the best brothels are in Gloucestershire. It was a joke.
Yeah. Where are they, though?
I don't know, but it backfired very oddly. It was very, because up to then I'd been entertaining them, and I did that one as my little joke, and it went a bit quiet. But then there was a couple of old boys at the back who were kind of looking around, going, "Oh, I don't know where they are. Where are they?"
No, they wanted to know.
They wanted to know.
That's what it is. They wanted to know. We started this conversation this morning about whether electric cars are going to get taxed, because we know it's inevitable. Because the roads have to be maintained, and we don't really want potholes.
No.
Rippling tarmac any more than we have. No. So, but I think the cost per mile is still going to be very beneficial for EV.
I don't think it will make them. And also, if the majority, and then in decades, the majority of cars are electric, then you've got to pay to maintain that. You've got to pay to maintain that road network.
It doesn't matter what the car runs on; it's still got to have a road.
Yeah.
Unless we go back to olden times. With dust roads, in which case we all have to drive electric Defenders and Rivians and other.
Which doesn't sound so bad.
Actually, it sounds quite cool, but you know what I mean. The reality of it will probably be rubbish.
But anyway, I think we've got to stop there because we've done over. Oh, I thought we'd do like 20 minutes.
No, 59
We're coming up
minutes.
to an hour. That's brilliant. So please subscribe to this podcast. Give us the 5-star reviews.
Yeah, review us, like us. If you don't already subscribe to the YouTube channel, please subscribe to the YouTube channel.
There's a lot of the answers, a lot of the questions you've asked here are on in some form or other on the YouTube channels. Now 500 videos.
Have we?
Yeah.
Wow, 500 videos in the archive, and a lot of them are still relevant. Actually,
they are.
That's the good thing. It's not yesterday's news necessarily.
And what's the other one? Oh, in America. So Jonny and I will be in
Fully charged USA
live USA live in 2020 at the Circuit of the Americas on the
February the 1st and 2nd.
Thank you.
I love the way you looked at me then, and you were terrified.
Some reassurance. Which is sounding really good. We can't divulge all the manufacturers who are going to have displays there, but there's a lot of them.
But also equally, if you're a US EV related or clean energy company and you want to get involved, get in touch with us through the website.
Yeah.
The website, fullycharged.show.
Yeah.
That's a real web address. It doesn't sound real, but it is. I've used it.
It's weird.
It works.
Yeah.
Fullycharged.show.
Yeah.
All right.
And
there's merchandise even on there.
There's merchandise about to be launched. A lot of merchandise.
We are, and we're going to be ramping up the merch probably on the run up to Christmas.
Both tried on the fully charged Christmas jumpers.
Oh yeah, we did.
It looked good on you. It looked like I was a very overstuffed German sausage had been rammed into a very tight skin.
We've done some prototype jumper testing. Rest assured, the fully charged Christmas jumper is a thing.
It is a thing.
It is a thing.
I think they're a bit pricey, so I would advise you to,
buy a size higher than you normally would.
A big one.
I put it this way: I'm an XL and I'm normally a medium. Don't know what's going on there.
Yeah. Well, I put on an XL, which should cover my very late middle-aged spread, and I could get the jumper over my midriff.
You could.
If you call that a midriff, I'd call it a mid-tyre tractor in a tube.
Mid-Michelin.
Mid-Michelin. Yeah. It would go over it, but it was definitely, the pattern was distorted.
Was it like when you draw on a balloon and then blow it up? Okay. Well, on that note, we'll say if you have been,
thank you for listening.